Good afternoon, everyone. I welcome you to the webinar on MSME credit underwriting post-COVID. This is a Samvit Insights Knowledge Initiative. So the coverage for today's session is predominantly on the impact of COVID on MSME. We will take up two customer segments, the formal SME segment and the informal MSE segment. And then we will speak about rehabilitation of customers, and we'll discuss why. That's the impact of fintech and analytics on underwriting for MSMEs. And last at the end, a summary and then the Q&A for the balance sessions we will do. So briefly, an introduction of myself. My name is Arijit Chanda. I have spent roughly around 28 years of post-qualification experience in the financial services industry and in the consulting. I had opportunity to work for the Tata Group, the Citi Group, and Fullerton. And after that, I started consulting and training for the last 10 years. I have covered both business, risk, collections, different functions, both for established businesses as well as for startups. Now, a few words for Samvit Insights. As I mentioned, this is a firm that I founded 10 years ago. Now it is obviously beyond me. We have different colleagues of mine. We are partners into this session. So we are a management consulting and a corporate training focused on banking and financial services. But we have a wide coverage from business to risk to analytics to operational effectiveness. And we both do the design as well as the implementation. And over the last 10 years, we have been fortunate enough to work with NBFCs, HFCs, fintechs, universal banks, small finance banks, and across in India, even in other geographies in collaboration. How are we different? We are more practitioners than consultants. So we do the job hands-on and we focus more on execution and outcomes. And the kind of team that we have has a lot of depth into these areas across the banking and the financial services. If you want to know more about us, we request you to visit our website, www.samvitinsights.com, where you can get a sense of our offering, our clientele, testimonials that they have given, etc. So let's dive directly into the webinar. Why are we here? What's the issue at hand? So as you're aware that this COVID-19 has been an unprecedented crisis, which has a global impact. But most importantly, so it's not like a demonetization which happened only to our country. And this time it has impacted us both financially and also draining us psychologically. And more so because future continues to remain a lot of uncertain. This has impacted the MSMEs the most. And why it has impacted the MSMEs the most? Because they have low liquidity, there is subdued demand, and these frequent lockdowns that are happening is taking a huge toll on their business operations and cash flows. So what do we address in this webinar? We address how it has impacted the MSMEs and the cash flow, and what can we do differently in underwriting in the short to medium term to address. So I think it would be good at the outset to first define the MSME, which we will be relevant for these sessions. So I have broken them into three parts: the informal, the semi-formal, and the formal. So the informal is the one we are talking about, less than 40 lakh, no GST registration, and predominantly cash business. The semi-formal is one which has turnovers between 40 lakhs to 150 to 200 lakhs, people where presumptive tax or composite GST is applicable, and they have a mixed transaction of cash and card. The last piece are the formal SMEs, turnovers beyond 2 crores or 5 crores mainly. We are normal GST and income tax payers, and most of the transactions are through bank. And the reason this definition is given earlier, because we will see as we go along, the underwriting for these sections will vary by the type of segment they belong to within the MSME. Now, what are we underwriting for? Now, normally this question doesn't merit any attention, because normally we will underwrite for new loans or new loans to existing customer. But for a change, now we will also be underwriting for debt restructuring. And we will see some of it post the moratorium ends for several of the MSME customers. And other than that, we will obviously continue to underwrite for new customers or more loan to the existing customers. So we have to also understand what is the underwriting, and this debt restructuring underwriting will perhaps an additional thing that we will see this time around. So purpose of underwriting is to figure out whether existing customer segment should we stay and grow with them, should we stay with them, or should we exit some of our customers. And this will now become very important, unlike in the past times, because we will see a very different behavior in the portfolio, and we'll have to take this decision whom we will grow with, whom we will stay with and grow later, and which are the segment of customers that we will have to exit because it will have an impact on the portfolio and profitability. So now that we have defined what is the purpose and what is the MSME definition all about, let us understand how the COVID actually impact the MSMEs. So when Corona actually struck us, we had multiple impacts. The cities went into lockdown for a prolonged period, so no economic activity. The top tier cities, pin codes in the top tier cities continue to be in containment zone, many of them, especially in top tier cities. Migrant, which forms a large part of the employment in a lot of other industries, be it manufacturing or construction, etc. There was a reverse migration back to the villages. So there has been a labor shortage, and there is still restriction in inter-district, interstate travel for most affected areas. In this backdrop, and this is what we track every day, and perhaps the only slide I have perhaps highlighted in red. These numbers were very different when we started and looks very, very different now. We have crossed 1 million, but the per day infections are rising. Now we have no clue whether this will be 2 million, 3 million. We know that the fatality rate is lower, but that doesn't give us a comfort because as more and more get impacted, more and more areas will be under containment zones. If they are under containment zones, then many of the people will not be able to work. And the 5 states which are hogging the limelight contributes 40% of the GDP, nearly 90 lakh crore. And please understand, this is where most of our producers as well as most of our consumers are. So this will also impact, and this is a number we have to watch closely as the unlock starts unraveling. So not only it has impacted lives and livelihoods, it is showing no sign of slowing down as yet. We spoke about prolonged lockdown, started from 25th March, and it has gone on till about end of June. So 100 days of productive days lost, and I believe that it will have at least 2 years of impact. And we should not see, think about normalcy, assuming the vaccine hits us early next year or middle of next year, anything before the end of calendar year 2022. And it gets worse because what is now becoming an impediment for growth are the sporadic lockdowns that the local authorities and the state authorities are imposing in certain states, disrupting both the business as well as the supply chain. So how did all of this impact our customer? So there has been no revenue for 2.5 months. They continue to pay fixed rent if the landlord has been inflexible. There are other fixed expenses like wages, etc., which they had to pay, especially for the permanent employees, even at a lower pay cut. For factories which have restarted business at 10%, 15, 25%, they have to do some amount of maintenance to keep it going. Correct? So there is a cost of maintenance even if your production capacity is nowhere near normal. The debtors are delaying their payments while the suppliers are demanding now everything in cash or shorter cycle. And when we had a sudden lockdown, we were saddled with a lot of unsold inventory, and with the changed customer demand and preferences, some of them also due to lockdown, it was difficult for them to sell. And on the top of it, we also had health issues. So we were impacted this time, not only with a huge cash flow crunch, but also health issues of our customers, our own employees. It gets more compounded at this stage. So what did the government or the regulator do to address it? So government actually came out with moratorium in 2 phases, first 3 months and the next 3 months. We are obviously hearing that it might get extended. I hope not. Obviously, the good news is in the first 3 months, the moratorium in NBFC between 60 to 80%, depending what segment. Banks between 25 to 40%. The good thing is the second round of moratorium has seen a lot of drop in numbers. That means a lot of customers are not availing of the moratorium. Then they came out with a 3 lakh crore package of giving 20% of outstanding loans. Unfortunately, not 20% of the limit. Therefore, also fully guaranteed. But there were 2 issues that happened. One, if you had not taken a loan, you were not eligible. Second, if you were at the later part of the vintage, you would get a lower amount. And most important, in the MSE segment, individuals did not count. Okay? Only the SMEs with some registration would count. And the last part was that the government has come out with a 10,000 crore equity infusion scheme, a 20,000 crore subordinate debt scheme. But these are going to take time. Were they enough or are they enough? My answer, I don't think so. It's enough. And having done work in the neighboring countries and other places, I know other initiatives have been taken by other governments. If you see, there are governments, the neighboring countries have given interest subvention because at this point of even for them to to service interest is a challenge. And we are not talking about interest subvention of old loans, but interest subvention on the new loan. Lowering of taxes, there has been appeal made to GST and other council, lowering of taxes. Not yet, decision has not been taken. So other countries have given some reduction in VAT, etc. But most importantly, restructure of loan. This is a big item. You must have read in the last few days, this is being discussed. One-time restructure, in my opinion, this is very, very, very critical, especially for the people that, for our customer segment. So yes, initiatives have been taken, but in my opinion, not adequate to get the MSMEs out of trouble. So we are getting some news end of June, and we are getting a mixed signal. So what are we seeing? So GST collection was only 9% lower in June compared to the previous year. But overall, there will be a shortfall for the full year because of the first 2 months, the collection was minuscule. For the first time, we are seeing a current account surplus, a trade surplus. It looks good, but actually it is not a great news because it has happened only because of lower demand of oil. Only good news is that there has been lower import on gold, assuming they're mostly locked up, and obviously lower prices. But lower import of machinery, other stuff also means that it indicates there is a subdued demand, and therefore a lot of imports are not happening. So it sounds good, but I think we can live with a bit about a deficit and compensated by growth. Two-wheelers, so certain segments like two-wheelers and tractors have shown growth. Tractors because we had a good monsoon and a good harvest, and two-wheelers because people, because of restriction in traveling, they prefer now their own vehicle. Now this is the positive side. The flip side is, if you look at commercial vehicle, it is minus 85%, car is around minus 54%. So they will take some more time to come back. As I said, agri is perhaps the best news that we can have this year because of good monsoon, record harvest, record sowing, and record procurement by the government. Correct? And we are expecting the recovery to be driven by two, assuming that they don't get as affected as we got in COVID, the metro. Interesting point that I want to share with you, that at the same time, the rating agencies have moved to SEBI, saying that most of the companies have actually not given them any supporting of information for the first quarter to revise their rating. Which basically means that we know that they have been down and they are not, and without that, the rating cannot be validated. And if my SME is a distributor or a supplier or himself are rated, we really don't know what their status. So if we are going to finance the value chain, we really will know whether the gradings will be downgraded or not. The expectation, for certain agencies are that most of them, because of top line growth and profit growth, will be downgraded. And this is where perhaps it becomes a bit more less transparent. So there are some green shoots, some because of temporary spurt of demand. We have to see the next 2 quarters to actually understand what kind of recovery are we seeing. So now we come into credit underwriting for the formal sector. So we will talk about all 4 elements of risk: the industry risk, the business risk, the financial risk, and the management risk. So let us first talk about the industry. So if you see, I have highlighted several industries here. Some are high impacted, some are moderately impacted, some are having low impact. So hospitality sector, we know, tourism sector, the hotels, the airlines. So I'm not talking about the large players. When you're talking about SME formal, look at their downstream, the value chain. Correct? Who are providing what to them? How are they impacted? So hospitality is impacted. Auto ancillary, autos were all closed, and therefore it has been impacted because just going back to production. There has been some sales, but I believe most of the sales have happened from the dealer stock holding, and part of the stock holding that was there on manufacturing, because the manufacturing has started mostly from June at a much lower scale. The worst part of auto ancillary is that auto ancillary doesn't support only India. It supports other large export market like Markets and Somi, etc. And there is a subdued demand even in Europe as well as in US. So there is an impact on auto ancillaries. But again, as I said, and as we will discuss as we go along, while we understand the industry overall, we have to break it up granular to understand where is the impact. So an impact in a two-wheeler supplier or a tractor supplier is lesser, but an impact to a CV is extreme and to a car is moderate. Within a car segment, the impact in high end is more extreme than which is a medium sedan car. And that's a level of understanding we have to develop on understanding industries at this stage if you want to underwrite the SMEs. If you look at pharma has obviously done well, considered essential services. India, in all likelihood, once all the vaccines come out, will become the producer for the world in vaccines. So it is doing well. But again, in pharma, the growth will be varied depending on what segment are you. Right? So are you the chronic segment or are you the acute segment? So the chronic segment is obviously going to do well. The acute segment will only do well once the hospitals open. Correct? So there is an impact that we will see. Surely construction is tremendously impacted. And why is construction impacted? We always think about residential. Residential will come later. One of the biggest spenders of construction is government, both the central and the state government. Currently, they are diverting all their resources towards the healthcare. So we will see their spends on, yes, maybe some on roads, some on irrigation for sure, but many other, they will postpone it. And if construction is impacted, if auto ancillary is impacted, it basically means steel is also impacted. And if construction impacted, that basically means cement is also impacted. Just to give you a sense of numbers, it is expected that auto ancillary top line revenue will drop by anywhere between 15 to 17%. And they will have a margin compression of anywhere between 200 to 300 basis. Cement, on the other hand, is expected to drop by, and I'm only talking about FY21, by around 12 to 15%, and EBITDA compression of between 350 to 400 basis, 250 to 350 basis points. And why this compression? Not because some of the input costs will be lower. So you will say, but so input costs are good, but the logistic expenses have gone up. If you are deploying temporary staff, your cost of now hiring a migrant has gone up. Most importantly, at a lower capacity utilization, your margins are most likely because you are not able to get a higher at a lower break-even point. So the good stories, therefore, are predominantly on the FMCG. Okay. Now, FMCG also, if you think, you will have to ask yourself, which category are we talking about? Are we talking about personal products, the shaving creams, the shampoos, the soaps, or are we talking about food products? The atta, the ghee, the butter. Again, here, if you categorize, you will understand that it is different. So what is homebound? They are selling very well. But what was business bound are selling less. Just to give you an example, a lot of ghee, butter, milk was going to the restaurant, was going to the hotels. And now so many of them are getting diverted to house. So there is an impact and part of it is getting covered. So they will have a growth, but the growth will be marginal unlike last because it will take a while for businesses to come back, especially on the hospitality side. But overall, FMCG should be positive. Transportation, we know the fact that the sales is dropped by 85-90% for the two top players basically shows that the transporters believe there is excess capacity at this point of time. If the production is not happening, therefore there will be less dispatch of goods. So it is going to take time for that. I'd spoken to some people who track this segment and they said they don't see much traction coming to this segment before September, October, and they don't think that these guys will be able to make payments, especially the smaller guys. And the others are moderate. And why are they moderate? So textile is obviously going to be impacted quite high because last few years we had a domestic demand also. So again, if you look at exports, there are orders, but the terms of orders are changing. They are asking for price discounts. They are asking for elongated payments from what are coming from Europe and the US. Domestic certain segment, innerwear, homeware, etc. Doing formal wears are going to take some time as people start going to office. So it will have an impact, but overall it may shrink between 20-25%. Some of the other segments which are showing moderate impact, correct? So let me talk about electronics. Very interestingly, you will see that certain categories are doing well. The laptops are doing well, dishwasher is doing well, inductions are doing well. So a lot of household usage items are actually doing well. People are actually procuring them. So segment wise, they are changing. Similarly in plastic, again, single plastic has come back because of sanitary issues. People believe the single plastic is better now at this stage, you throw it out, which was a bad before this thing started. Printing, packaging, because home deliveries have gone up suddenly, a lot of by Dunzo, Swiggy, Zomato, etc. So a lot of paper packaging being used. And we know, and therefore some part of that thing, obviously B2B, a lot of them where it is required for labels, etc. will be down, but partly compensated. So the point that I'm trying to make is that if you are going to underwrite an SME now, you have to understand industry much, much better than you had to understand earlier. Because earlier when the economy was doing well, somebody was at its peak, other was moderate, there will be very few at the lower end. But it can get inverted at this point of time. You really need to know which industries are doing well, where is my existing customer there, where is my future customer there, which part of the product segment within that industry is doing well. And to understand this better, you have to understand the clusters very well. There are enough clusters, so I've just highlighted 3: pharma, auto, and printing, just to give you a sense how they are doing, the worst, the moderate, and the good. You have to track all these industry vitals very, very carefully for the next 12 months. Because of customer preference and demand, the product profile will change. The OEM sales and the replacement demand can be very different. So the battery sale to the auto segment and the battery sale in the secondary market, because all the cars were standing, they are going back, they are being restarted, a lot of battery requirement will come. A lot of debtors will now push out the debtors days, okay, creating some working capital eligibility. Suppliers will keep on pushing that, shorten the days because we will move into cash, worsening that. I spoke about compression of margin because of labor availability, logistic issues, capacity utilization, etc. But interesting that will happen is you will see a lot of positive inventory optimization. And because of those unsold inventory, a lot of these guys would now like to moderate how they produce and sell, more move to just-in-time management. So the positivity is how they will interact is to make that do a correction on the inventory. So the supplier payment, the inventory optimization, elongated debtor days will now have a change on a traditional working capital cycle. And for that, you have to understand the industry and the industry vitals very well. On our underwriting bit, we are used to doing the following. So we do the banking analysis, financial analysis, field visits, which is the verification, credit bureau. We look at personal management discussion. So some of them will be temporarily impaired and partly impaired. And therefore, we will have to retool and reskill in how you deploy these tools now going forward. As I said, this is going to be for some months. And as things come back to normalcy, perhaps if we revert back, but is going to take us a while, and it may not go back 100% that we think. So I will introduce you to a concept called cash budget, because earlier you were tracking mostly about financials, revenue, profits, but next 18-24 months is about liquidity. We will talk about profits later. Do you have cash to survive or cash equivalents to survive this crisis? If you don't, then many of the MSMEs will go down. So we will track. So what is the cash budget? Was used long term back by the PSUs when they used to handle cyclical industry. Normally people use the ratio analysis, then cash flows came into play, which is backward looking. Going forward, we will use this tool, which is forward looking. And let me tell you, this everybody uses, whether it is a bank or a non-bank or a normal business. Because today, every person in an organization, whether it's a finance manager, he wants to know what is coming in, what is my expenses, what is my cash I'm having. And the planning is now going. The difference is in cash budget, now you are planning it daily, weekly, monthly. Very different than earlier, you used to do it for monthly, quarterly, annually. No different. If I take an analogy in the bank, when we do liquidity stress testing, we actually ask the bank, tell us about your cash flow on a daily basis, weekly basis, monthly basis. Similarly, it's applicable to an SME. So we have to now start engaging with them and start demanding this document, because they maintain it, they have to, otherwise they cannot know. They have to know how many debtors will pay in, how many cash sales we will do, what are my expenses that I have to pay on my expenses, what are the kind of purchases that suppliers I have to pay back from the creditors, and therefore what is my balance cash there, and this is going to be there. So going forward, you will now use this tool to track business liquidity, and obviously you will track actuals with budget, and you will do this on 3 months, 6 months rolling basis, at max 12 months rolling basis. In my opinion, all other instruments in this short term will become irrelevant except for this. Not only we will take the cash budget from them, we will also have to do some sensitivity analysis on it. So it is like giving the CMA data, correct? So they can tell us next 1 year this is going to happen. In a normal time, fine, but not now. And that's a 1 year. We are talking about next 30 days, 90 days, 180 days, etc. Because the business assumptions have changed, we have to figure out what if the sales volume falls? What if his unit price realization is lesser? What if the trade terms have got changed? The supplier is demanding now cash payment. What if the debtors, which was an average holding debtors payable days of 45 days, now move to 60? And therefore, what is the positive impact on an EMI moratorium that I'm availed of? So this sensitivity has to be done, and you have to see whether this sensitivity can survive the cash budget, and within this cash budget, so sensitivity, is my company liquid enough to actually repay my existing loans, or even if I give additional loans. And this is after doing the sensitivity. If not, then he or she is actually a fit case for a restructure. Then let us speak about the credit bureau. Now we know that for people who have taken the moratorium, there is not going to be any reporting during this period, something which we can't help, but it will have impact. So the scores that they were giving out earlier, I think will now be recalibrated, new algorithms will be written as they come out to see. However, if I assume that in the phase 1, 60% of the people took moratorium, and in the phase 2, only 40% of them took, which basically means that 40% in the first phase and 60% in the phase 2 did not took moratorium. And if they didn't do, then we need to figure out when they come out, what happened during the 6 months. Were there some new inquiries? Did they take any new credits during this time? How has their outstanding changed? So if it's not changed, stays constant, that means obviously some moratorium is applicable. For certain, there has gone up because he's borrowed. Some have gone down because he has repaid. What has happened to his days past due? Because what we are hearing that even people who have not taken moratorium, the bounce rate has increased. If the bounce rate has increased, have they paid or have they not paid? Has their past due got changed? So your overall reliance on purely the score to a great extent, especially who derive mostly on analytics, have to be now seeing also a bit more detailed, trade line by trade line, product composition, movements, inquiries, and therefore we will have to do something that we used to do earlier more, and especially, as I said, more applicable to the SME, which are a bit larger ticket loans. Yes, we will use score for some time, but at this point of time, I think these bureau insights will be much more helpful for us to understand, because I not only want to know what is happening to my loan, I also want to know what is happening to other loans. So a CIBIL scrub, a bureau scrub, which was an activity I would do sometimes, will now become a regular feature. Yes, it is a cost, but it is a worthwhile cost. Before I restructure or I take any decision on the customer, I need to know what is going on his repayment, what is going on his leverage vis-a-vis other financiers that he has taken money from. And that will give me confidence that do I exit this customer? Do I stay with this customer, or do I grow with this customer? The supplier and the buyer check is perhaps the most important thing that has happened now. Because earlier it was just a part of our tick box mostly. We used to do it and we will pick up some buyer, supplier, will make a call, just confirm, because we had a lot of reliance on some digital data, some financial statements, etc. Now all the history of he had in the past are irrelevant for the next few months, if not for the next 1 year till March 21. So now the only person who is keeping him viable in this business are his suppliers, if they're still supplying or intend to supply, and his buyers, if they're buying or intend to buy from him. And therefore, you have to now take a higher percentage and perhaps speak to the key buyers, whether he likes it or not, because now this is to a great extent a lender's market. And therefore, we have to ensure, in addition to what we asked for the cash budget to understand cash flow, to validate those assumptions, I need to pick up from supplier, did he pay you during the lockdown? How much is he telling you that he will pick up from you in terms of goods? Have you changed the trade terms for him, what was there earlier? Similarly to a buyer, and I'm talking about B2B, not B2C. Did you make any payment during the lockdown? How much are you going to purchase from him or her in the coming months? And have you also changed the trade terms? Are you now elongating the data cycle? Because all this, what he says, will validate what is there in cash budget and will impact the sensitivity analysis, and I will know what is the outcome on which basis I will decide how you will actually make the EAPI debit. So the supplier and the buyer's validation has become very, very, very important. Then we come to the banking analysis. Now this is something that we kept a lot of, and we have been using many of digital tools to analyze it. So the question is now, we have to analyze it, but not just looking at average balances and total throughput, but the quality of the throughput and the quality of the expenses that he's done. So the difference that you are going to do now in your underwriting will change qualitatively a lot than quantitatively, though it will change quantitatively too because of lack of data. So the question will be, are his DOT debtors paying, or is he making payment as he when I want to restructure him or going to pay him, give him additional loan? Is he making payment to the creditors? If he making critical expenses, is he paying rent or he stopped paying rent? That means he's got something from the owner. Has he made loan repayment or he has taken a moratorium? Because it have an impact on the balances. Has he taken loan in between to tide over the liquidity crunch that he had because of lack of debtor realization? How has the net balances moved? Has his cash and bank balances fallen down because of more utilization and less income? What is the level of utilization? Has it increased or decreased? So he has uncommitted lines, he's actually used it. And whether the banks have actually cut his lines in CC and OD and adjusted downwards during this challenge so that he cannot draw down when there is no economic activity. So this is the kind of analysis that we have to actually do to understand. So very different in the bank, we were looking percentage of check bounce, average banking, etc. Those are relevant. But now I go inside the line and basically figure out, and now what I'm doing is connecting the dots. I'm saying, what did the supplier say? What did the buyer say? What did the creditor for expense say? Can I see it in the bank statement because it's more formal and it is tying up with what he's telling me in the cash budgets? And then I get a much more clearer picture in amounts of his liquidity and viability. Now, many of us do ratings for a higher ticket SMEs, whether we use a rating agency engine or an internal developed engine. Now, if you remember, they were broken into industry, business, financials, management. So that rating will also undergo a change. I am not talking only about the variables, but I'm only talking about the scale and the weightages. So the focus on my industry risk is more whether the industry itself is a red industry or a amber industry or a green industry, because that will tell me where is my customer and then what is going to impact on his business risk. On the business risk, I will now see not what he has done in his past, what's the vintage of the business, whether this business that he's undertaking is a sustainable business model or not. So the way I look at the business will change. The management risk will not come back only on, how old is he running, what is his qualification and all that, great. But most important is, does he have the ability and clarity to implement a turnaround strategy? And that is what we are looking for. And this will become perhaps a big deciding factor of MSMEs turning around and coming back over time. So are very differentiated evaluating management risk. And last, from the financial risk perspective, I said, I'm more interested in liquidity. Other ratios are important, but at this point of time, as you ride out the crisis, will you have a runway of money, liquidity over the next 12 to 18 months? Because if I don't see that, then very difficult for you to give additional loan, but also a risk of the other term loans that I'm holding or some of the revolving facility that you're fully utilized. So we believe that some of the variables and some of the weightages of the rating will change, and you need to relook at that, making it relevant for lending into the future. Now, in terms of the business model will also flip, and it will flip in many ways. The product mix will also change because the customer demand and preference has also changed. The segmental sales will also change. So if you see, while domestic thing was not happening, our exports were still happening. It was down, but the percentage of export down was much lower, much better scenario than the import that came down. And a lot of export under certain segments continue to happen. There will be domestic. So somebody is export focused and those export market is working, he's diverting. He may be a margin compression, but he still has some revenue happening. Pharma, for example, and I don't know, many other sectors which are going. We will see a greater amount of automation, especially on the manufacturing side because of restriction now of people. So whether it's on the production floor, whether it is on the warehouse, material handling, etc., we will see that. Even for other SMEs that we handle at the insistence of their anchors. We will see a great amount of digital adoption going. And one way of cutting costs, so today, even in a manufacturing setup, people will ask, does the finance team need to come? Does the HR team to come? Does the admin team need to come? Do they have to be there full staff? And more percentage of people, at least till things stabilize over next 1.5 years, We will see more remote working, more digital adoption adopted, including our SMEs. We will see the delivery challenge change. So a lot of people who were not online are now coming online. If they were only doing brick and mortar, they are saying, no, I think we will have to move percentage of our sales online. There will be a greater focus on supply chain diversification. Because if you see, and I'm not talking about diversification for people on import or China, etc. So that's fine, that will be there. I am talking about even domestically, if I move to one source so close, and that particular source is highest impacted, let's say Chennai or let's say Pune cluster, etc., where some of the automobile clusters are there, and it is not only supplying to the industry there, but outside, I may have issues. But I may be in a green zone, but if my producers, supplier are there in the red zone, then my production will get impacted. So we will see supply chain diversification also. There will be a great focus on safety first, and perhaps for the good. So now, a lot of people will make sure distancing, sanitization, wearing masks, etc. But the companies will now put, because they understand that if employees get infected, then their businesses will get impacted. So this whole business model, as you see, as I said, we can't do crystal gazing maybe up to next 12 months and 18 months, can't beyond. But even for that time, you have to understand it will undergo a change. People will adopt, an entrepreneur will adopt to a new norm. And this will change short to medium term. And just some casing points to say. So there is a manufacturer in Haryana, which was manufacturing crockeries, etc. He has shifted in doing wash machines, sanitizers, etc. There is a SME in Telangana, which was producing cotton pillows, and he shifted in making masks and PPE kits. So a lot of these guys are flipping, but you should not also get swayed that it will completely shift. These are opportunistic moves, obviously, to keep some cash flows going in taking up an opportunity. But some of these players are doing that because there's an opportunity. But we will also have to figure out that some of them may not be sustained over time as it changes. But it's important that from the business's perspective, you spend time to understand the business model much, much better than you did earlier. Now let us talk about the management risk. Very different the way it would have evolved earlier, because I believe that at the end of the day, the businesses which will survive or not survive, other than the demand, etc., will depend how innovative, how agile, how flexible the entrepreneur is. And therefore, we will look at some of these aspects much more closely when we interact for the management discussion. So his integrity in terms of, is he transparent with the issues that he is facing? Is he showing any intent to make changes in his business model? Is he agile to the scenarios and adopting new things? Now, all this is good, but most importantly, people, I like the two examples I gave, is there a bias for action? That means, are the entrepreneurs doing something about it? It is not about thinking about it. So if somebody has done it, he is more likely to survive. Does he have a track record of handling similar crises? I mean, was he around in 2008? Was he around in 2016? Was he around before that? Because if he has handled crisis and come out the cycle, he's more likely to. If somebody has not seen, it's not that he will not, he will, but he is less likely to. And overall, in your assessment, do you think he or she is competent enough to ride out the crisis? So the way we would have the management discussion earlier will change, and now you will focus more on the way he's thinking and how is he planning to get his business out of the woods. So the entrepreneur's intelligence, initiative, intent, and execution capability will decide his survival and growth. And this is what you will be looking for when you now engage with the promoters of these SME companies. This brings to me another element of our underwriting, which is collateral. So obviously some of us are doing, some of you may be doing uncollateralized lending, but I'm talking about which are collateralized lending, be it a term lending or be it a revolving facility. So you could have a high-end property, commercial or residential. So assuming that you are in an SME. If you are in MSE, then you are having more properties which are affordable at the lower end. And in addition to that, you also have inventory and debtors if you are giving working capital loans facilities like CC. Now the question that will come now in underwriting, that are these liquid and can I readily realize it? So what we hear on price correction, so real estate companies are saying 10 to 12%. A luminary like Mr. Deepak Parekh says 20 to 25% correction is possible in certain markets, which basically means that my loan to value will undergo a change and should undergo a change. And you will not believe, I was doing a work in other neighboring country where we have seen 20-25% drop, and we have seen a lot of these people coming to restructure because they are not able to sell these properties. So now when we relook at some of our existing portfolio, or as we go for and lend, we will have to redraw our LTVs that we do. We will relook at the kind of collateral we have to take based on whether they are easily realizable or not. Even in terms of debtors, because of their aging will increase, we will have to figure out if some of the debtors will be considered for limit setting, whether there's some non-moving stock now which was kept for selling or not selling, to be excluded for our limit. So the collateral support that we had to the facility has to be reevaluated and has to be seen from the context in the change environment. So let us now see what will happen to the management discussion that we will do. So we will talk more about his liquidity now. Where will he arrange money from? Will he take a debt? Will he infuse from his equity? How is he giving me a sales and expense projection? And my reliance on cash budget, what are the estimations that he's giving? How will he manage his leverage? Not only his business leverage, even his personal leverage. How will he manage? He may have a home loan, he may have multiple auto loans, he may have multiple personal loans. How will he manage that? Most important question, when does he see normalcy? So one of my client actually did a survey of SMEs. And the feedback was varied from 3 months to 6 months to 12 months. It was more skewed towards 6 months, and then tail on both sides on 12 months and 3 months. And it seems that 6 to 12 months are now more likely, and more so because of these frequent lockdowns that is getting imposed by the state authorities or the local authority. And most importantly, how are you going to change the business model to adapt to the new norm? And that is what the discussion we will have to have. So if you see the management discussion now, or the personal discussion as you call it, is more forward looking than going back to history and validating it, because history is no more valid, at least for some time. It is more about his outlook and his ability to deliver in the future what he says he will do. Just to bring in context of supply chain here, why I brought it here, because I believe that the supply chain financing will now come of age, and I hope it does. We are seeing this trend in some other countries, because now lending long in this uncertain market will become difficult. So you will obviously lend short, predominantly if you are doing, obviously CapEx is expected to be low, I'm talking about OpEx. So I would like to do more short-term lending, evolving, whether it is pre-shipment credit or post-shipment credit. And therefore we will see a lot of supply chain coming into this, and this will be more driven by anchor comfort and transaction data that they share for the underwriting. So if you are doing supply chain financing, whether as an NBFC under invoice discounting, or you are doing some other in the bank, we have to ask the same set of questions. Is he in an industry which is highly affected or least affected? Are there anchors which are viable anchors, or anchors with low ratings? And what is the expected of sales transaction, purchase transaction is telling us on which basis we can lend going forward? Because supply chain disruption, subdued demand will obviously have a bearing on industry and anchors for some time. So we have to choose selectively. So one of the countries in Central Asia, we are working, and we have just launched the supply chain. We had selected most of them in Jan-Feb. We revisited them in June. We have narrowed down, and now we are launching with selective places, especially let's say FMCG and others, where we see there is a gain. So, but there is an impact, because most of these anchors now are coming and saying, we will delay our payments to the supplier. Why don't you create some liquidity for us? So these things are actually coming to bear now, and I hope it does, because it is better. Now, having said that, we have discussed everything quite theoretically. I will put this into an example so you understand how and what I have spoken about, how you can apply this. So I'm taking an example of an SME customer who is an auto ancillary, but he is a tier 2 ancillary. So the OEM is Hero, the tier 1 supplier is Rinder, And this customer, which has a 25-year vintage, is based out of Uttarakhand, has 250 employees and supplies tail light to Rinder, and Rinder therefore does something more and supplies it to him. Now, when I looked at his financial on 1st March, I saw that he had a sale of 60 crore. He had a profit of 0.75 lakhs. And he had a cash in bank of 3 crores. And he was holding a loan of 10 crores. Then I sit down with him and I ask him for the cash budget. And I take his cash budget for the next 3 to 6 months. And the way the picture comes out is like this. So if you see in the past, his closing cash was 3 crores. Now, when I come to him on 1st June, I see his cash has got depleted to 2 crores. And that means he has spent 1 crore during when it was a lockdown, whether for wages, whether for rent, or paying some of his suppliers just to keep it viable. And he did not have much revenue coming in. I also see that for the next 3 months, he is saying, I will not pay any moratorium. Sorry, I will not pay any loan. The 3rd, 4th to the 6th months, he gives a totally different story. He says, I will then continue paying my EMI. And he believes that based on this, and if you see his sales are staggered, his debtor realization is staggered, etc., that he or she will be in a position to reach the same position sometime in 6 months' time. So this is exactly what we are talking. So using the cash budget, and he is saying he will take 6 months to normalcy, I'm using a liquidity framework to figure out when will I come and actually reach there. So using the cash budget, now I will know that whether he can pay the existing loans and whether he is good enough for me to pay the new loans if I'm giving him some. Now this is on the cash budget. Now let us talk about assessment of other activities. So we looked at his credit bureau and we saw that there is no change in term loans, correct? That means he would have taken some moratorium. But there was some downward change in his working capital loan balances, means some payment has come in. However, there was no inquiries in the last 6 days. He's not looking out for a loan. When he looked at his banking, we figured out that debtors have made some payment in April and May. Similarly, he has done some payment to his supplier, and he has also made payment for his employees and utility payments. This explains that drop in cash opening and closing balance. We looked at his GST and we figured out that no sales were recorded for April and May. However, the March 20 sales was recorded and he actually made the tax payment by 20th of April. We spoke to the buyer, Rinder. Rinder said they have scrapped the orders they had given and now are moving to a quarterly order only for 3 months. And they believe that it will go up phase from 25% to about 50% from June to September. Now, if you understand, he is preparing tail lights. Not only he supplies it to the OEM or the tier 1 supplier, he also has a secondary market where he brands it and sells it. When we spoke to the distributor, they said there is no immediate demand. The stock is adequate. Not too many people are coming because there are not too many vehicles there on the replacement demand. So they are not planning to buy anything till about September. So this will tell you how it will impact the cash budget. Then we went to the supplier and spoke to him. Supplier confirmed that payment has been relieved. Now they also said that they have cancelled their full order and he is now giving a 2-month order and the volumes he is saying is 25 to 30%. So if you see, he has a commitment of 3 months, 25 to 50%, but the onward commitment that he's giving to his supplier is 2 months and also talking about 25 to 30%. This gives you an indication that he is actually looking at inventory optimization. He doesn't want to hold too much, procure too much for production, work in progress and stacked goods. You want to keep it, okay, if I get a back-to-back order, because I'm also holding some stock on my own as on 31st May or 1st June. So I will utilize that as well. So we saw about the cash budget in terms of fixed costs, etc., and phasing of that sales over time. And his moratorium in term loan has given him some cash to at least to keep it. When I had the management discussion with him, these are the facts that he had shared. That he believed the auto sector is impacted and he also believes it is uncertain. Because he is supplying two-wheeler tail lights, he believes that is a better category compared to other categories. However, he believes that the recovery will be only partial this year and full recovery will happen only 21, 22. So you get an indication. So at going forward, you know what kind of sales projection and liquidity projection that you are going to expect, because this is what he's stating. He has already taken cost rationalization excesses and expense, and he wants to make an expense of 20-25% saving. Out of that, obviously, he said that he had obviously done away with the temporary staff. He saved that. He is using his permanent staff and doing everything. So he says cost rationalization. He has other discussions with suppliers, etc., on some cost rationalization. On working capital, he said that whatever the parent will ask on repayment, he'll try to take a back-to-back arrangement and try to maintain his working capital. Obviously, they have to do a sensitivity analysis on this. Not why because he's saying this, because we have to test. He has not taken in funding, but when we pushed him, he said, yes, might take funding. I may take funding of this 20% of the loan. So 10 crores, so roughly 2 crores. But he's saying, I am not going to take it right now. Let the order start flowing in. Maybe in the next quarter, I may look at it. We also asked him about his health, because going forward, personal discussion must discuss health. If any of them in his family and his employees were infected, he said, yes, his employees were infected. Some of them, they have recovered. And if he insists, he can show us the records. And he also confirmed, and which we visualize, that he's maintained some social distancing and hygiene practices, mainly driven by his anchors insistent of all those practices. All this gives you an idea how going forward the whole underwriting will evolve. It is not the way we had done in the past, very different, using the same tools, but modifying them to the need of the current and the near future. So on the informal segment, so before I go to the informal, just to give you a sense of the semi-formal, I told you. So these are the semi-formal guys who have registered entities, have customer base and wallet, etc., where you are, doing either on banking or you are doing card receivable, etc. But this is not our focus today. Our focus is on the informal segment, the small business, which are unregistered entities, small customer base, where people are doing micro labs, or people are doing PLSENP, or people are doing IL loans if they are MFI or SFB, etc. Now the challenge in the small business is as follows. The small businesses footfalls have fallen. Okay, again, my relevance is in the city I stay, and sometimes I have to go out for some. And when I go and see something around, because we have IITs next door, so we have small markets here, there is hardly any footfall. So therefore, low sales volume. Obviously, a lot of stocks are lying which are not moving because the customer preference demand has changed. They are B2B business, where not B2C, where is the data realization is lower. Suppliers of those smaller businesses are saying only cash. If they are rented property, landlord has given no waiver. They are paying fixed expenses. But most importantly, MSMEs have very low liquidity threshold, anywhere between 45 days to 60, 75 days. So they are having depleted savings. So they are vulnerable, very, very vulnerable at this point of time. Again, to give an example, so I have taken a small example of a hardware shop. He is in a standalone on the road, 400 to 500 square feet, owner plus town staff, 15 to 25,000 income sales. Very, very small items you can see from the picture, 15 lakhs of stocks, and give selective credit. So when I went and started working on this customer, I looked at his cash flow pre-COVID. So let's say this is a customer who was with us, and his pre-COVID, he was selling 3,90,000. He had other income of rental income, and he was delivering a cash surplus of 31,000. After COVID hit, we figured out that his sales has fallen from 390 to 260. His rental income has halved. That means his tenant is now only paying him half. Assuming he is still bearing the same expenses, his cash flow has fallen by 50%, more than. I'm making some changes. Let's say his expense will change marginally. That means if he was eligible for a loan of nearly 16 lakhs, he is now eligible for a loan of only 11 lakhs. Or if he was managing a loan of 15 lakhs, today he can pay an EMI of only 11 lakhs. Which basically means that at this level of cash flow, he has to now undergo a restructure. So you have to look at cash flows for small businesses pre-COVID and post-COVID. And you cannot deploy on cash budget because he doesn't have the understanding of doing this on an ongoing basis. So you look at past and look at the new setup and you work out the new calculation. Now, when I spoke to this customer, similar to like we had done in the previous one, we spoke to the supplier because he's B2C. So he said, no, order volumes have come down and he's not ordering all the products now. Some products he's ordering. And I will tell you which products he's ordering. And he's saying, now I'm only supplying on cash. So either earlier I has to give him credit. Now I don't give him any credit, which basically means there's an impact on his cash flow. We have seen the cash flow. There is a drop in sales and purchases. He's continued bearing the fixed expenses. He has taken a loan moratorium. He's got a short relief there. When the personal discussion happened, he said that his shop was closed for 2 months. He opened only in June. He has received some payment from the debtors. And who are his debtors? Contractors, electricians, plumbers who take to him frequently. He is doing fresh sales only on cash because he is not getting those debtors coming in. His sale has fallen by 1/3. And most of the items that are going are electrical and plumbing components that are selling. Basically replacement that is happening in the house. So my switch has gone, my regulator has gone, the pipe has gone, etc. Because he did not have a lot of cash or savings, he has actually taken a gold loan into this just to keep making sure he pays the supplier. And in his expectation, he expects that he will come out in 3 months. If I look at his credit bureau, he has taken both his moratorium on the micro lab as well as on the two-wheeler that he has. And we have also seen that on top of that, he has actually taken a gold loan. And because it was a gold loan, they did not take a decision on the moratorium, they still gave him. When I did the verification, we figured out they are not in red zone. That means what he was saying was right. However, hardly any footfall was seen and adequate stock was seen, which we saw in the picture. We went through the cash book, etc. We verified those things at the shop and we got the KYC at the door. Interestingly, he told us that he has started getting payments through alternate methods, through Google Pay, Paytm, Bheem, because not everybody is coming to the shop and some of them we could evidence. When asked to him about the health of his family and his employees, he was evasive. He was not as transparent as the SME. He was obviously having sanitizer, he was wearing masks, but his customers were not maintaining any social distance. Compare this to the SME which spoke in the past. It is very, very different. So now we are saying that the other guy did not take a loan, had no inquiries. This guy took a moratorium, also took a loan, and his cash flow fell much sharply. And he has moved from fully cash to some digital, but his both cycles of his debtors and the supplier are all cash now. Neither he is giving credit, neither he is getting credit. So the way you see his cash flow has totally changed. And if you do this exercise trade by trade, whether you do it for grocery, furniture, fabricator, etc., they will change. So if you see, similar to the industry marking I had given for the formal segment, if you see, I have given each of them differently. A lot of people, this kind of restaurants, people are not going. This kind of restaurant, not much on food, home deliveries, because they are not meeting the safety standard, they are impacted. On a high impact, if you see textile, again, as I said in textile, if it is innerwear, home clothing, fine. But if I'm talking about saris and cards, etc., not much at this point, I might pick up at the festive season. If I look at somebody who is a car repair and service shop, he is getting. Why moderate? Because a lot of people are not taking out their cards. But whatever cards people are taking out, there is some service issue, they are bringing it in. So he has some cash flow, not full. While the grocery on the other side is actually rotating his stock much faster than you do earlier. And a fabricator unit on the other side is moderate because he actually had orders in hand which he has to complete now, for which he had advances. And now it is coming, he's getting a lower order, but all orders have to come with again some advances. So he has a decently better, but not to a pre-COVID volume that he was holding. So this level of analysis has to be done for small business as they are more vulnerable. But the impact on each of the trades will be very, very, very different. This brings me to a topic of fintech and analytics. So I have covered two things, the formal segment underwriting and the informal segment underwriting. Now I will tell you how we believe some of this involvement of fintech and analytics will now play a very, very important role in the future. Now, some of them names you know, so I will not, and there are much more. Obviously, I didn't have time to put everyone. So a lot of people, especially on unsecured digital lending, unsecured, even people who are not doing digital lending, they are using a lot of fintechs. If you see, some of them I have highlighted in red because I believe that some of them will get impacted because of lack of digital footprint in the near past, last 3 months. But some of the other behavior will be available, correct? You can still do SMS scraping, you can do email scraping, you can still do KYC verification, remote, you can still look at social behavior, etc. But having said that, the ITA, GST, etc., this will be there for some time. This will come back, it will take some time. But it is important now that my advice to most of my segments who are both working in semi-formal, informal, that start using more automation, start using collaborative tools to the extent possible and relevant. Because the future of trade underwriting will not only be about portfolio quality, it will be also about productivity and unit economics. So we will have to look at that and start doing some adoption when we do that. It is important that we do. So there are multiple things available. You look at many of these things. So I believe that the fintechs have a role to play and will play a role in the future as well. As things come out, it will take some time, some footprint. So you will, as I said, you will do some qualitative lending in between, being in expert judgment. But you will also have to make this investment going forward, both in technology and data analytics. Because to me, that is going forward, lean underwriting will become also the norm. Because many of the places where I am advising, or we as a team are advising, we are now being asked by the CROs and the business head, how can we lighten the credit underwriting team? How we can strengthen the portfolio monitoring team? How can we make straight-through processing underwriting more efficient and possible? And I'll give you some example at the end on this. Somebody asked about using for video for PD. I think going forward, using video, not only for KYC, but using video for personal discussion, using video for stock verification will become a norm. And you have to do it. Only thing, you have to do it smartly and using the right tool. So if you guys understand eKYC, and you have seen some of you how it gets done, some of those integral features are there. It gives you a timestamp, it gives you geotagging, it ensures the way you interact with the customer that he cannot be impersonated, the documents the way he gives it, that he cannot do fraudulent things, correct? So a lot of this, so basically tracking some of these things, and there are tools which basically takes care of some of the fraudulent things. How you enter data is also there, and those things will actually come into play. It is important that we look at some of these things, and I think this video PD will come, and just try to, I was fortunate enough recently to see my son doing this for his bank statement. So I figured out how they were doing it, what movement is he doing, how they are validating. I visualized the whole exercise and trying to figure out how do they ensure that the document he is giving is not somebody else. How does he know that he is only entering? And they keep on switching position. They keep on switching the documents. They ask him to write different times. They ask certain things to be on, like location tagging, etc. And there are certain tools in fintech by which you can do that. So we are deploying some of this in some of our thing in the neighboring country, where we are asking the owner, even in small business, to take a video, how he should take the video, how he should switch the cameras. Obviously, you will say he should have a smartphone, not have a smartphone. So I am also talking about where adoption is possible. In some places, it may not be possible, so it's fine. But where adoption is possible, I think many of these things that we do versus a fintech does, in my opinion, it is our mental block. I am not saying everything 100% is good there, but you have to also accept that everything 100% that we traditionally may not be the right thing to do. I think a hybrid thing is also much better. So using more, so for the semi-formal segment, surely for the formal segment, using more of fintech is perhaps a necessity. You can actually use Google Maps. You can actually use Google Earth. I mean, I didn't want to show you here, but if you go back and try to locate me, you want to know where I stay, how does it look like, what is the surrounding area, whether it is accessible by road or not, you can actually use it. I have used it. I don't have to go. If I have to locate even my, somebody of my friend, where is he staying, I can use both the maps and the earth to actually locate. I can't get into his flat, but I can surely locate his building. I know the accessibility. I can also today figure out pin code wise what is under containment zone or not. So whether it is possible to go there to do a physical PD or not. So many of these things are possible and we should adopt this. That's one point that I will make. So a lot of this on-site and off-site remotely will happen. Wherever possible, please use these tools. And just to leave a positive note, when Perfios came or many of these guys came initially, I have interacted with them earlier for behalf of my clients, adoption was low. But as things started move, now Finbit is there, there are many other places, ScoreMe is there. Today GST data available through Finfort. So many names are coming. People are bringing new stuff. People are adopting and the adoption percentage is going up. I'm not telling you do 100%, but don't be afraid of trying, because more you do, you bring effectiveness and productivity into underwriting. I will now talk about an important aspect, which I am a firm believer on, which is analytics. In my video on collections, I had said why collection analytics is tremendously required. Similarly, I believe that time has come to ensure productivity with objectivity and for better unit economics. We look at these scorecards. Now, a lot of you will say that but the scorecards are valid for formal segment. You cannot be that much wrong, okay? Because I have been fortunate enough to see this in China. I am involved in a project in a neighboring country where we have launched scorecards and limit allocation tool for informal segments, the lower end, which are, yes, you need quality data. You should know how to create a data infrastructure. You should know what is the relevance of the data. So we use tools as surveys, we do backtesting, we do a lot of things. And most importantly, what type of variables? And I'll give you an example. We started with an expert score. We are going to, now we have moved it to a hybrid score, which is expert plus this. And eventually we believe in 18 to 24 months, we can move a machine learning model. And who are this segment? Grocery, hardware, furniture, RMG. It has taken me 1.5 years between me and my colleague, who is part of Samvit, who is a decision scientist, to deploy this. And this is currently under implementation. So it is possible. It is not only talking about formal segment, but we have to figure out. And I will tell you how it was driven. It was driven because business head and the credit head, CRO, came to us. And he says that he cannot do a linear addition of people as is, they do 10,000 loans a month. They said, I can't go to 12,000 loans a month and add 20% people. I want to add 20% more loans with same number of people. You have to tell me which percentage, 30% of the loans or 40% of the loans has to be traced through with the portfolio quality. And we brought in these tools and did. So important thing, and we have also, pushing for in certain scorecards, even through the supply chain, using transaction data. So it is very important that not only for formal, semi-formal, but also possible for informal segment. You have to know how to do the survey, how to pick up the right variables, how to give the tool. But I think the time has come, as there will be more pressures on cost to income. As I said, for long-term benefit, deployment of analytic tools and imbibing and having technology will become the core. So just to give you an example of a standard scorecard variable, you would look at some of these things, correct? Educational level, vintage, age of borrower, standard. When I say alternative variable, I am not talking about only social media variables. I am talking about relevant variable for a particular trade. So what is the competition within 5 kilometers? Because such small businesses like grocery, like hardware, depends how many cases are there. For restaurant, for example. What kind of quality of handset does he use? Is he a smartphone user? Is he a non-smartphone user? What kind of apps does he have? And you will be surprised in one of the neighboring countries, very high penetration on Facebook, correct? So most of them have just because they have Facebook. Correct? UPI usage. I gave you that example that there are people now who did not use UPI has started using it. And you will be believe on case in point in my own building, we have a vegetable vendor from day one. He took cash for the first month and everybody told him that we don't have cash last beyond 1 month. He moved from that and take all his payment to Google Pay and Paytm, a pure vegetable vendor, fruit vendor, just supplying to one building in Powai. Whether he is using a billing software, not using a billing software. Has he adopted home service? Has he moved online? So if you see, these are the variables, are very, very different variables we normally will not have, but they become very, very relevant in the new context. We are looking at free cash flow. I'm not asking if his revenue trend and all. I mean, is his free cash flow increasing? That itself will tell me that his default rate will go. So now the question is, depending on the type of trade, the sector, the segment, and whether formal, informal, semi-formal, I can adopt, bring in new data points to build new scorecards and make it relevant. So I believe that going forward, the scorecard variables will undergo a change and it will be something new things that will come into play. So the last topic for the day is rehabilitation. You have heard me talking about rehabilitation at the beginning. If you were doing a normal underwriting webinar or thing, I would have spoken about only new loans. But I believe that rehabilitation is going to be required for MSME to come out of this crisis. And why it is required? Because the customer preferences have changed. There is a lower demand, therefore a lower growth, therefore a continued drag on overheads. Debtors are not paying on time, and all of them are resulting in a lower cash flow. And I cannot use a lower cash flow to pay the past level of EMIs, assuming that I was on a higher FOIR or DBR. Restructure support has to be given by NBFCs, HFCs, banks, etc., especially to the MSME segment. And I believe that your restructure book will be anywhere between a 20 to 40%. And we will know when. We will know in 6 months' time post the moratorium comes out. If the business comes out in 6 months, maybe it will be at the lower end of 20%. If it takes more than nearly a year to come back, it may be as high as 40%. All a function of the level of leverage that MSME was happening prior to lockdown. So we have to do restructures, but how do we do? And my suggestion is use multiple tools to restructure. Do not have a standard mindset of only extension. If you believe that his cash flow will improve in 6 months, but today he can support interest, so give him interest only option. I am not a firm believer of moratorium, full moratorium. I am okay for a principal moratorium. I think some payment has to come in. Second, if you believe that business is picking up, because for certain trades that we talk about, is picking up, correct? As the unlock happens, then I can go for a step-up loan. Okay, you give me 20% of EMI, 30% or 50%, 60, 70, and 6 months you give the normal EMI. It is rear-ended a bit, but I come and normalize over time as is business. For some people, the ad hoc loan is required. Some of them actually require that additional funding to kickstart the business. If you believe that the business is viable, it has a demand, and he requires an extra funding to do so, you are okay to do that. Otherwise, you will put good money for bad money. And that is a distinguishment that you have to make. The last, if there is no understanding in terms of uncertainty, you can go back and restructure as a percentage of sales. And these are more so for the smaller level of businesses, correct? So you have a smaller level of businesses, a sari shop, a hardware. They said, fine, you sell daily, you can pay me daily. You sell weekly, you pay me weekly. I don't want a monthly EMI. I want payment to come in as your cash flows. However, one word of caution, this kind of credit restructuring must be backed by digital payment. It cannot be done by cash collection because this will impact, therefore, cost of collection. But today you are open to try out different way of rehabilitating a customer, and you must do this for your good customers because they deserve it and they are more likely to stay with you and grow with you. The last piece is that because rehabilitation, I expect it to be in that level, I believe the companies need to prepare for it now so that when the moratorium ends and there is request, you are able to identify the weak accounts and get sales, risk, collection, everybody involved in this rehab process, engage with the customer, understand and assess his business, and then create a green channel rehabilitation. Your good customers, and when I say good customers, I am talking about, let's say, depending on your type of NBFC, 70 or 80% of your customers who did not bounce and did not do so since last 6 months or last 12 months deserve this kind of treatment if they come forward. Because what you will be anyway struggling with is with the marginal and bad customers. But what you cannot afford is to struggle with your good customers. So you should actually focus on their rehabilitation. So create a specialized team and have a special focus to rehabilitate the customer so that you come back. Some of you will talk about provisioning impact, asset classification. I hope the regulator will take a positive view, and hopefully before September, they will take a decision on one-time restructuring, even if it is not so. I believe taking a small hit today, rather than taking a larger hit 6 months from now, that is a trade-off that we should do, especially for good customers. And there must be some faith and trust in the MSME entrepreneurs of the country. This brings me to the summary and the end of the webinar before we go to the questionnaire. So in summary, understand that the MSME is multi-segmented. So whenever you're taking a decision, depending on your exposure, informal, semi-formal, formal, you take decision appropriately. Ask yourself this question: why am I underwriting this loan? Restructuring an existing loan, or I am giving him a new loan? I must track the industry vitals, especially for the SME loans, more so like you talked about supply chain finance, whether distributor or supplier, through invoice discounting for other methods. Tweak the credit tools that we discussed. Introduce things like cash budget. Relook at the way you do supplier credit verification. Tweak the rating and the scorecards that you need to do. Please lend short in the coming months. What you have done in the past, you cannot change. That's fine. But what you're going to do, because today, even if an entrepreneur comes and tells me that I need a 3-year loan, I will tell him that, can you predict with some certainty? And I have not heard a single SME I have spoken to who has said, I actually can tell you what will happen after March. So if you require funding going forward, you are requiring short term, I will give you short term, whether collateralized or non-collateralized. Create a crack team for restructures. Please believe in the technology and data relevance in the coming months. It is easier, it is here to stay, and it is here to grow. And I believe that investment has to be made. I mean, people do scorecards, some people do, some people don't. But this is a good investment to do, because over time, I think now the question of credit productivity will come in a big way. And therefore, it is important that we do so. Fraud will continue to be a threat. So you have to, though it is an operational risk, not a credit risk, but closely associated with credit risk. So you will have to keep your eye. There will be issues like impersonation, false declaration, references being accommodated, etc. So you have to have a oversight on this. As I said, please focus on liquidity. I am not interested on revenue growth, profitability growth if they are not equalized and I receive it in cash. So cash is king. And last and not the least, customer well-being. So when you send your relationship officers or your credit officers are speaking to the customer, please inquire about his health. Please inquire about his family's health. Please inquire about his health of his staff. Because please understand, if one of them get infected, then through contact tracing, everybody will be in quarantine for 14 days, which basically means half the month they will have no business. And then another half month of the month will take time to come back to the previous level. So if he remains healthy, he will be in business. If he is in business, then he will be able to pay us. So it is important that as a credit team, we have to be open. We have to be alert. We have to learn to adapt with changes, and more importantly, we have to accept uncertainty, because we are so favor certainty that anything goes wrong, we get psyched. No, this is going to stay for a while, and we have to learn to adapt, relearn, and redeploy our skills. Someone asked me the other day, should we become very strict? Should we lend? Should we just stop? I have only one answer to that question. If you look at a ship is safest in the harbor, correct? But ship was not made to be in the harbor. Ship was there to sail in the high seas. Similarly, a finance company was there to lend. It is in the business of lending, so it has to lend. It has to decide whom to lend, how much to lend, and when to lend. Very similarly, for the captain to decide when should he sail, how should we manage the high seas, and how should we reach for the shore. So it is important that you decide what steps you want to take now, what decisions you will take in underwriting, and those decisions will decide how will the risk management underwriting piece will get pan out in the coming months. One more aspect I wanted to share, that we are planning to come with a future more webinars on portfolio management, data analytics, and supply chain. So we will see based on our ability to, because it takes time. Even this one, it took me a month to prepare to make it relevant for all of you. But we intend to share this kind of knowledge as a part of Samvit Insights initiatives. Me and my colleagues will do that, and hopefully you will find it beneficial.